Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Linda Moscatelli from the Title I Monitoring and Support Office, also known as TIMSO, at the California Department of Education. I'm here to discuss how we support LEAs that have schools identified for school support and improvement, including Comprehensive Support and Improvement, or CSI, Targeted Support and Improvement, or TSI, and Additional Targeted Support and Improvement, or ATSI, as they're going through the FPM process. During this presentation, LEAs will gain an understanding of how CSI, TSI, and ATSI are monitored during the FPM process and the requirements of the School Support and Improvement, or SSI instrument. For LEAs participating in the FPM process in 2026-2027, your review will include an SSI review in addition to the Compensatory Education, or CE instrument, if your LEA has schools that were identified for school support and improvement, including schools identified for CSI, TSI, or ATSI. We're going to review each of the items contained in the SSI instrument during this presentation, including some of the reasons that each item could potentially become a finding. If you've already attended sessions detailing the CE instrument, you may notice that some of the items in the CE instrument also appear in the SSI instrument. When you're going through your FPM review, the CE instrument will be applicable to Title I Part A funds, while evidence provided for items in the SSI instrument will be applicable to school improvement funds, also known as CSI funds. The requirement for SSI 01, school site activities, is that the LEA shall, for each school identified by the state and in partnership with educational partners, including principals and other school leaders, teachers, parents, and family members, locally develop and implement a CSI, TSI, or ATSI plan for the school to improve student outcomes. For CSI, this plan must be informed by all indicators, including student performance against state-determined long-term goals, and must include evidence-based interventions. The CSI plan must also be based on a school-level needs assessment and identify resource inequities. In addition, the CSI plan must be approved by the school, the LEA, and the state educational agency. TSI and ATSI plan requirements are similar to those of CSI. These plans must be informed by all indicators, including student performance against long-term goals, must include evidence-based interventions, must be approved by the LEA prior to implementation, and must be monitored by the LEA. In addition, ATSI plans must also identify resource inequities. The evidence that LEAs will be asked to provide for SSI 01 includes any LEA notifications to schools that have been identified for TSI or ATSI, the school's improvement plans, and any records of the involvement of educational partners in developing the plan. For many schools, the improvement plan will be included in the school plan for student achievement, also known as the SIPSA. But in some cases, this plan may be part of another document, such as a single school district or a charter that used its LCAP in place of the SIPSA. A note that school improvement plans implemented in the 2025-2026 school year will be reviewed. Records of educational partner involvement may include agendas, meeting minutes, sign-in sheets that indicate the school's educational partners were involved in developing the plan. Some of the reasons that findings are issued for SSI 01 include the LEA failing to notify a school that it has been identified for TSI or ATSI, or school plans for TSI, ATSI, and CSI schools lacking required elements. Note that although there is no additional funding associated with TSI and ATSI, it is still required that identified schools develop a school plan to improve outcomes for the student groups identified. The requirement for SSI 02, allocations and reporting, is that the LEA must disperse school improvement funds in accordance with the approved CSI funding plan that has been entered into the Grant Management and Reporting Tool, or GMART. For this item, LEAs will upload the general ledger for school improvement expenditures under Resource Code 3182. As a reminder, Resource Code 3182 refers to your CSI funding. This ledger should indicate that expenditures of CSI funds match the plan for funding that the LEA entered in GMART. Reasons that SSI 02 may become a finding include the LEA making changes to how CSI funds are allocated without reporting such changes to the funding plan in GMART. So it's important to ensure that the CSI funding plan reported in GMART accurately reflects how the LEA is allocating its CSI funds. The requirements for SSI 03, allowable use of funds, include that the LEA ensures that costs charged to the CSI program are reasonable, necessary, and allocable to the program, that the LEA uses CSI funds for the development of strategies to improve pupil performance at schools identified as requiring support, and that CSI funds are not used to hire additional permanent staff. Evidence that will be reviewed for SSI 03 includes duty statements for staff funded in whole or in part with school improvement funds, the general ledger for CSI expenditures under Resource Code 3182, the position control report for staff funded in whole or in part with school improvement funds, the school's improvement plans, and time and effort records for staff funded with school improvement funds. Please note, although permanent staff may not be funded with CSI funds, the LEA may have expended CSI funds for temporary staff or for extra staff time beyond their usual workday, and documentation must be kept to account for this, including time and effort records. Reasons that SSI 03 could become a finding include the LEA using school improvement funds to benefit non-CSI schools, or using school improvement funds for expenditures that are not aligned to the identified root causes in the CSI plan. Please ensure that school improvement funds, including those reserved for use at the district level, are only used to benefit your CSI identified schools. When determining allowability of expenditures made with CSI funds, we're looking at the relationship between the budgets and expenditures reported in GMART and the school's CSI plan and expenditures in the general ledger. There should be clear alignment between each of these for expenditures to be considered allowable. The requirement for SSI 04, supplement not supplant with school improvement funds, is that each school the LEA proposes to serve receives all of the state and local funds it would have received in the absence of school improvement funds. This means that if any of the LEA's schools that receive CSI funds should receive those funds in addition to all of the state and local funds that would have been received by the school if it had not been identified for CSI. Evidence to demonstrate compliance with SSI 04 is a written methodology for allocating state and local funds for the fiscal year under review, which will be 2025-2026. This methodology may take multiple forms and may be a written narrative describing how state and local funds are allocated, or a spreadsheet showing equitable amounts allocated to each school, or a combination of the two. Regardless of the format, the methodology should demonstrate that school improvement funds supplement the school's state and local funding. Now, this methodology is the same methodology you'll be submitting for CE 13 and should show how state and local funds are allocated to schools. A common mistake made by LEAs when preparing evidence for this item is to upload the methodology to allocate CSI funds to schools. This item requires the methodology to allocate your state and local funds. Reasons that SSI 04 could become a finding would be the methodology indicating that CSI schools did not receive state and local funding on the same basis as non-CSI schools. The requirement for SSI 05, LEA administrative charges, time and effort, is that the LEA must properly charge and document allowable salaries and wages that are reasonable and necessary in accordance with applicable CSI program requirements and federal accounting requirements. Evidence requests for SSI 05 include duty statements for staff funded in whole or in part with school improvement funds, the position control report for such staff, the LEA's time and effort policies and procedures, and time and effort records for staff funded in whole or in part with school improvement funds. If school improvement funds have not been utilized for any personnel costs, please note this in a comment in the California Department of Education Monitoring Tool, or CMT. SSI 05 could become a finding if it's determined that the LEA's time and effort procedures do not result in a system of adequate internal controls that provides assurance that charges to the program are accurate, allowable, and properly allocated. Remember that school improvement funded positions require the same time and effort documentation as other federally funded positions. And if the funds are used to fund extra staff time, your time and effort procedures should include processes to track that extra time. The requirement for SSI 06 LEA equipment inventory is that an LEA spending school improvement funds on equipment shall maintain a historical inventory record for each piece of equipment with an acquisition cost of $1,500 or more per unit. This record must include the following for each such item: the item type or description, the model or name of the item, the serial or identification number, the funding source and federal award identification number, who holds title to the item, the acquisition date, the item's original cost, the percentage of federal participation in costs for each award under which the item was acquired, the location of the item, the use and current condition of the item, any transfer, replacement, or disposition of unusable equipment, and any ultimate disposition data, including the date of disposal and the sale price or method used to determine the item's current fair market value. Capital expenditures for equipment are allowable as direct costs as long as items that have a unit cost of $10,000 or more have prior written approval of the federal awarding agency. Disposition of equipment purchased with CSI funds with a fair market value in excess of $10,000 may be retained, sold, or disposed of with written approval of the federal awarding agency or pass-through entity. Disposition of equipment with a current fair market value of $10,000 or less may be retained, sold, or otherwise disposed of with no further obligation. The LEA must conduct a physical inventory of each item of equipment, and the results must be reconciled with the property records at least once every 2 years. The evidence that LEAs will be asked to provide for SSI 06 includes approvals of any capital expenditures, as well as historical inventory records that include all of the required information. If no equipment has been purchased with CSI funds, please note this in a comment in CMT. Some of the reasons SSI 06 could become a finding include if the LEA's equipment inventory is missing required elements, there's no evidence a physical check has been completed on the equipment inventory in the previous 2 years, or if general ledgers and inventories indicate capital expenditures have been made without the required prior approval from CDE. Now that we've had an opportunity to review each of the items in the SSI instrument, here are some important reminders as you prepare for your SSI reviews. Remember, school improvement plans implemented and expenditures of CSI funds made in the 2025-2026 school year will be reviewed, so please prepare to submit evidence from the 25-26 school year. Because the items requiring evidence for each SSI review may vary from review to review depending on the schools identified, the schools reviewed, and the LEA's funding plan, it's important to reach out to your SSI reviewer with any questions about which items are applicable for your LEA's specific situation. If you have any questions or would like to get in contact with the TIMSO office, you may email us at timso@cde.ca.gov, or you can call us at 916-319-0854. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.